The luxury to me is the ability to be yourself, to be at home, to be in a beautiful space where you can actually be who you are.
We're here with Amar from Standard in your newly opened manor in Soho. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
I am curious too, because you have a very interesting background. You've done a lot of the more quantitative type stuff in your career, and now you're Chief Creative Officer. But tell us a little bit about how you got into the hotel business.
I started my career about, 25 plus years ago. And my first job was at Starwood Capital. And at that time, it was a very small company. And Barry Sternlicht, who's the chairman of Starwood Capital, I guess he took a liking to me and became his assistant. In 1997, 98, we bought ITT Sheraton and became the biggest hotel company in the world. I was 22 years old at the time. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was along for the ride. And then I found myself in Asia with him, and found myself at Harvard Business School after that, and then Blackstone, and ran the global developer W Hotels, and with Andre Balazs, and then now running the Standard and creating the Manor.
Yeah, and what was it like working with Barry? What was the best advice he gave you?
Well, actually, it wasn't much advice. He would drop you into the deep end. The funny story I'll tell you. In 1998, when the Asian markets crashed, we took a trip to Asia. We're doing 10 cities in 10 days, one after another after another. About 4 days into the trip, we stopped in Phuket, and this is 1998. I went to the Aman Puri. It's the first Aman hotel ever opened, and I just looked around. I said, couldn't believe a place that magical existed. So seeing stuff with him was amazing. And then we got to Thailand, and the government had seized all the finance institutions. And Barry went to go visit the Prime Minister with some partners, and I ended up staying back. I was too young to go visit the Prime Minister. And I was supposed to meet him at the airport, and he rang the phone. He said, actually one of the other partners rang on the line. He said, Barry thinks this is really interesting. He wants you to stay. I said, stay in Thailand? He said, yeah, stay. I said, how long? Stay indefinitely. So I stayed 10 weeks on that trip. I stayed 2 years in Thailand. So the thing I learned most from Barry is to be bold, to be brave, to take risks, to figure it out.
And you were supposed to stay in Thailand to run the business there? Yeah,
to figure out if we could invest there, to figure out what we could do. And I did end up staying 2 years in the region. We bought some non-performing loans from the government. We invested in a company called Sansiri, who became the majority investor in Standard. And those formative years for me to just figure out what I was doing and make some relationships and kind of set the stage for my career.
Oh my God, yeah, that's fascinating. Well, so much, and now it seems like you're so focused on the creative element, but so much of what goes into this is the real estate, right? You're choosing to invest in a certain area. And I know you're operating everywhere from Louisville now to, as you mentioned, Thailand. How do you think about making that decision for where to invest in real estate?
Well, I look at my career and it looks like it was planned out or strategic in some way. It really wasn't. And the way I look at real estate too, it's pretty opportunistic. You have a feel for it. There's an economics involved in it, but fundamentally it's a sense of place. Think about Soho. There's nowhere like Soho. I moved to New York in 1996, and this was the coolest place in the world. So I've always had a soft spot for it, but there's no replacing it. And so when the opportunity came up to buy this hotel, one of the biggest lessons I learned from Barry in the real estate business is that land is irreplaceable. So this is going to be Soho forever, and there's no place like it. So if you can get your hands on irreplaceable real estate, the rest will fall into place. So
it's not necessarily that you're looking at the trends and you're thinking, oh, people are suddenly interested in Kentucky, I should get a property there.
There's a little bit of that. I think when we bought bunkhouse hotels, I saw this trend toward what were considered secondary cities at one point in time. But there was this democratization of culture and culinary and style and things like that. So we saw what was happening in Austin. That was very clear to me that was happening. I went to Austin in 2010 or 11 for the first Formula One. You could tell something was going on there, and you could feel it happening. And so we ended up buying the bunkhouse hotel group there in Austin. Louisville's a similar story. Louisville's a funny story, actually, totally opportunistic. During COVID, I was going to go to Austin for the weekend, and I had to drive. I was taking my daughters. We were going to drive 30 hours or so to get to Austin. You know, in those COVID days, you couldn't flew.
Right.
And so as we were embarking on this trip, my daughters, a friend, and my dog, and we were headed to Louisville was our first stop. As we got to Louisville, we realized Austin had heated up as a hot zone. So we couldn't go all the way over there. So we stopped in Louisville, got an Airbnb, and it turned out there was a site around the corner for a hotel. And I said, I found Louisville to be very interesting, like a mini Austin, so we ended up doing that deal. So I think you have enough experience to have a feel for a place. It's not highly strategic, but you can have a sense when something's happening, and real estate might make sense.
Yeah. So to go back to your career trajectory, so you were working with Barry, and then Blackstone.
I was working with Barry, and I was living in Thailand based on after having gotten dropped off there. I applied to business school.
Did you push back at all? Were you like, oh, maybe I don't want to stay in Thailand?
You don't really push back on Barry. And also, I was 24 at the time, so it was like, why not? I had nothing to lose, everything to gain. So I stayed. I had an incredible experience. And at that time, no one knew what was happening. It was like the whole bankruptcy of the whole region. So we're all in it together. It was an opportunity to get out of America and learn and be the only one. There was the only one representing Starwood Capital. I was like 23 years old. So from a learning experience, I couldn't imagine anything better.
Were you dealing with government officials and the prime minister?
Bankers, government officials, bankers, companies, bankruptcy experts, lawyers, all the above. Fascinating. So then as I was enjoying that experience, I did apply to business school, and I said I'd love to stay doing this, but I'll apply to Harvard Business School. I knew a bunch of mentors, and Barry went there and stuff. So I applied there, I got in. And then after business school, I decided to go work for Blackstone. So I worked for Blackstone for a few years. Then Barry came calling again and said, do you want to run the international development for W Hotels? Do you want to move to Europe? So that sounded pretty fun, actually more fun than Blackstone. So it was just when W was getting started. So I moved to Brussels with my now ex-wife, and I had my first daughter there, and lived in Brussels. We started expanding W all over the region. First one was Istanbul, then Barcelona. We did St. Petersburg, Doha. It was just a lot of fun. That was probably the most fun job I ever had. After that, I came back to New York and ran the global development for W Hotels. Mm-hmm. And so that was, we took that brand from when I started 8 hotels to about 50 or so. It's kind of lost its way since then for lots of reasons. But after that, one thing led to another. I started working with Andre Balazs, who founded the Standard brand. And Andre was very kind. He said, I've talked to a lot of people, and people think that I'm interested in expanding the Standard brand around the world, and you're the right person to work with. So I worked with Andre, learned a lot from him. He's probably the best hotelier I've ever met. And learned a lot from him, but I realized we were different characters, and it was hard to work for him. And so I left the company.
Why? What was the hardest part?
The hardest part is he's a creative genius, but the way we do business is very different. Actually, part of it was that in order to grow the company, you needed to do things that were kind of boring. Mm-hmm. Revenue management, sales, technology, operations, and those weren't his primary interests, mm-hmm. which is understandable. So it was his company, so he wasn't prepared to build the infrastructure needed to actually grow the business, that was his prerogative. So I left on great terms. About 6 months later, he asked me to have dinner with him, and I did. And he said, do you want to come back on board and run the company? Which was very intriguing. I still thought Standard is a great brand. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, but in order to do so, we have to do things differently. What I meant by that was, I said, how about I find some investors and buy the company? Because by force of will, by personality, by charisma, by age, whatever, he was going to always be the boss, unless I was able to get the funds to buy the company. So what I did, raised some money from 2 investors. One was a guy named David Heller, who's been a great partner. The second was actually a gentleman who was the chairman and CEO of Sensiri, the public company that invested in us. Mm-hmm. Subsequently became the Prime Minister of Thailand. So I raised money.
The Thai connection is strong.
Thai connection is strong. And it came from those days when I was back there 20 plus years ago. And so we ended up buying the business, buying Andre down to a minority position, and started to grow the business. That was 2013. Started to build the infrastructure, bought the Bunkhouse Group in 2014, minority share in 2014, majority share in 2015, and started to grow. We did the Standard London, et cetera, et cetera. And then 2017, we bought the Thai public company Sensiri and bought out Andre completely. And then we're really off to the races. We opened the Standard London just before the pandemic, Standard in Bangkok, Standard in Ibiza, and we've got a pipeline of 30 hotels around the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And why did you go into the boutique hotel business? Because it seems like when you think about running a Holiday Inn, it feels a little simpler, right? Whereas a boutique hotel, people have very high expectations, takes a lot of time and care. What was it about that space?
Super easy, I like it. I just like staying, as a consumer, it's just more fun. It's just, my whole career has been about, there's been no plan. It's stuff that I like to do. It's people that I like to work with. It's stuff that I enjoy. And this segment of the hotels, it's architecture, it's design, it's mm-hmm. music, it's culture, it's fashion, it's food. It's like everything I enjoy.
Do you think it's more of an art than a business?
Definitely. I mean, it starts with the art. And I hope you feel at the Manor, this is something and at the Bunkhouse Hotels, the Manor, the Standards, ever since Andre founded the company, Liz Lambert, who I work with, people who are great at this business, it's about the art. It's about the art of hospitality. It's about the art of making people feel incredible, about creating beautiful spaces. And I think you can feel the difference between people who are doing this boutique hotel business for the business of it, and people that are doing it because they have soul and heart that they put into it. And I think you can really tell the difference. And if you do it right, then the commerce will follow. But it definitely starts with the soul and the passion and the heart and the people.
Yeah, and how do you, I mean, because you mentioned you have so many locations, how do you possibly maintain and oversee
all of those spaces? I can't take credit for it all. We have an incredible team. And the only way to do this in volume and in scale, which we're doing, is to have the best people. I tell the team all the time, I don't know how, I can't cook anything. I can't actually design anything. I can't draw anything. I've never run a hotel. I can't do any of this stuff. I know what I like. I can hope to lead. I have some ideas.
What does that mean, you've never run a hotel?
I've never been in the operations of a hotel.
Okay. So you've always thought of yourself more as somebody who's creating the vision.
I just, not that no reason other than I never did it. I've never been a general manager. I've never worked the front desk. And that probably my biggest weakness, that I've never done that, but also I think somewhat of a strength, because I look at all this stuff from a consumer perspective, everything from a guest perspective. And so I got in this business because I like it as a guest. So everything I look at from my lens is what a guest is going to think, how a guest is going to react, how a guest is going to enjoy themselves. So that's what I bring to the table more than the business.
Interesting. And as a guest, what is one thing you love to experience or see in a hotel when you get into the room?
When I get to a hotel, my favorite hotels are the ones where you can walk in the door, take your shoes off, relax, and totally feel yourself and feel at home. And you talked a little bit about what does luxury mean. Luxury, to me, the weird thing about luxury in a traditional sense is it's very uncomfortable. People get dressed up for luxury. They show off for luxury. They worry about how they're looking. And somehow that's luxury. Luxury to me is the actual opposite. It's the ability to be yourself, to be as comfortable as you can be, to be at home, to be in a beautiful space where you can actually be who you are.
Yeah, interesting. Well, that seems to be sort of a trend too. There's quiet luxury, there's more relaxed luxury. As somebody in the space, how much do you think it's your job to create those trends versus follow them?
I think the way I think about it, I think I'm really lucky in a sense, or the way I think about it, it sounds really probably underwhelming, but I just do what I like. I just create stuff that I enjoy, and I hope that other people enjoy it too. And
so no market research, no?
Zero.
Okay.
I don't know if I should be proud of that, but I think that, I guess I've traveled enough, and I've seen enough, and I've experienced enough to think that here's something that hasn't been done before. And you can never do something that hasn't been done before if you're doing market research, kind of by definition, because it's never been done before. So, and that's the goal. That's what Standard's always been. That's what Andre did when he started Standards. The Standard logo is upside down for a reason. It's because it's never been done before. So I think that's what we're doing with the Manor. I think we're doing with all our hotels. And you can't do that if you're trying to figure out what everybody else is doing.
Interesting. So what is the Manor doing that no one else has done before?
So some of the best, and probably the same for you, I would imagine, some of the best holidays I've ever had in my life, some of the best stays I've ever had is when you're staying at a good friend's home. That feels so different than any hotel. So it sounds like really, really simple, but it's really hard to execute. So the feeling I'd like you to get here is that you are staying with a friend. It's our manner of hospitality. So we've done a few things that are different. Obviously, from the beginning, you start on a very residential street, a place where you would love to have an apartment, or you'd wish your friend had an apartment. You look at the building, and it looks very residential in how it is. It's not very heavily branded or labeled. The Manor sign is very small. It says the address on the roof, but that's about it. And when you walk in, well, then we worked with a designer who's never done a hotel before. A good gentleman named Hannes Pier, who's an absolute creative genius from Milan. He's the type of person, if you had a beautiful apartment, you'd want him to design it. So he's never done a hotel before, so that's an interesting challenge. Our team is so wonderful. Verena Haller, who leads our design team, she's able to guide someone who hasn't done a hotel and make it a functional hotel. So that combination was great. Put a lot of trust in Hannes and Verena. Then we did a couple other things. We have downstairs of a restaurant called The Otter, which is a street side restaurant helmed by a good friend of mine named Alex Stupak, who's a wonderful chef. But that's the only part of the hotel that's really open to the public. Open to the public meaning the rest of it, when you enter the world of the Manor, it feels very quiet, very residential, very, very serene, very discreet. And you have a little tiny check-in desk, and we hope about 80% of the guests will be checked in already. So when you get here, we can just give you your key. You can go straight to your room.
You check in online, or how does that work?
Check in online, and if you've been stayed here before, you'll almost automatically be checked in. We wanted the rooms, as you look around, to be very simple. Not a lot of technology. There's no TVs in the rooms. probably a first for New York City.
Really?
No
Oh,
TVs
I
in the
didn't
rooms.
realize that. And that was an intentional thing?
Very intentional, because if you go to a good friend's house, you're not going to waste your time in the room watching TV. So we want people to enjoy the city. We have a beautiful sound system that's built in.
Can somebody request a TV?
You can. It's a little bit of a secret, but you can.
Okay.
We don't want to disappoint people, but we also don't want you to spend your time in your room watching TV.
Really and is this the first hotel that you've done that doesn't have a TV?
We've done some in resort locations. We have
Okay.
a beautiful little hotel in Todos Santos, Mexico, in Baja California, which doesn't. But it's the first hotel in an urban environment, certainly. I would venture it might be the first hotel in New York at this level that done it without a TV. So I think that's a pretty big statement. And the other thing is we have these guest-only spaces, guests and friends of guests. So in what we call the apartment on the second floor, that's if you're staying here, it's a beautiful room. It's your place to spend time and enjoy and bring your friends. In the morning we have pastries laid out like as you would at a friend's home. We have a pantry, you can kind of raid the pantry. In the evenings we have this aperitivo hour from Milan where we have cocktails on us for the guests so they can meet each other. Beautiful cocktail bar behind there called Sloan's, which I think will be the most beautiful cocktail bar in the city. We've got a rooftop just for guests and their friends. You can have a nightcap after dinner. So it's really like having your own apartment in the city where you can enjoy and spend time.
Yeah, and I know you've also tried to make it feel a little bit like a private club in a certain regard. And I'm curious to get your take, because there are so many private clubs that are seemingly popping up in the city every month.
Exactly.
Do you think that that's a little overdone? Or
I do. I don't love the private clubs because of the pretentiousness of getting into them and the exclusionary aspect of it. Mm-hmm. To me, I've never loved that. I don't think New Yorkers necessarily love that. But the feeling, what I like about a private club is you know the people that are there. You have a comfort level of that. So when you stay at the Manor, it feels like a private club without the pretension of applying to it. So your membership pass for the day or for the night is really your room night.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've heard people feel like a private club might make sense in London or a city that's a little more stratified, but New York's beauty, it seems, is the fact
I was a member.
Everyone takes the subway and everyone...
I agree. I totally agree. And the fact that there's new stuff to try all the time. And there's so much new things to try all the time. New York's about experimentation and discovery. But I do understand, I'd like this to be people's home away from home, and I think private clubs can serve that need, mm-hmm. a sense of safety, a sense of belonging. Mm-hmm. I think that makes sense. I get it. I've never liked the exclusionary aspect of it. That's mm-hmm. just what's happened for me.
Yeah. So you mentioned the logo, no TVs. What other things have you done that no one else has done?
No
Here
children.
Really?
In
okay.
the Manor, the children are welcome in the restaurant. No children in the hotel. No children under 16. So I have children. I love children, but it changes the dynamic. It's a little bit of an adult playground, and there's snacks and things and drinks on the house, mm-hmm. and lots of mirrors in the hotel rooms. The fingerprints are not great. So we do have no children. We have these guest-only spaces. We have very simple things, like taking out all the unnecessary service elements. And I say that we don't like to force the interactions between people. I find things like you come out of the car, someone's there to take your bag, but most of us take our luggage ourselves now, mm-hmm. and a lot of us don't even carry cash. So these awkward
right.
moments of like, oh, am I cheap because I actually don't have cash, but I don't need to take my room, then you feel bad. We made the rooms very simple, very tactile, very little technology, so you don't need someone to come up and follow you in the elevator to explain the room. I don't like if you want someone, we're there for you. We don't have someone coming up to explain the room. We if you open the mini bar here, you see it's full of still, and you still or sparkling water, you probably drink one or the other. Every day it's replenished, no charge for that. So all the things that you would like to have, those conveniences, we've thought of them ahead of time.
You don't have the ice machine that...
We don't.
We'll bring you the
ice. We'll bring you the ice.
Okay, no, but that's actually really interesting because that is such an awkward interaction when you go to a hotel. And then, you don't have cash. That's an interesting acknowledgement of how times have changed.
Absolutely. And I take my bags, and all of us want to take our bags. We just come off the airport, and you don't need those awkward interactions. And so sometimes when I travel, they know I come from a hotel company or whatever, and they say, oh, sir, sit down. The GM wants to come greet you. And then I just get off a red eye and then have to sit there. They think they're doing something nice for me. I'm like, the last thing I want to do is talk to the GM right now. So that's one. So I'm taking out all those interactions that don't add value. So what I want people to interact with the team, the mm-hmm. staff, because we have lovely, lovely staff. I want to do it on their terms. When the guest wants to, when they come ask about where should I go eat tonight, or those are the nice interactions that are on the terms of the guests, not the forced interactions that the staff pushes you into.
That's fascinating, because it does seem like there's hotels that you go to, and maybe that's charming at some level, that they've done service, they've done things the same way for decades and decades and decades, but here it's new and you're sort of embracing the fact that tastes have changed.
Right. Tastes have changed, and also, the traditional luxury hotels have a certain level of formality with the staff.
Yeah.
They obviously have dressed the part, but they have a script. And when we try to hire people, we've always done this with the Standard and here with the Manor, we want people to show their personality. We're hiring you because of your personality, and we want you to be yourselves. There's a story I tell sometimes because we opened a Standard in the Maldives, which is our first resort hotel. And I was there for the opening, and sitting there, one of the young men who was a bartender came up to me and said, "Mr. Lalvani." I said, "Yeah." You didn't have to call me Mr. first of all, but he said, "I really want to thank you." I said, "Okay." I was thinking maybe he's going to thank me for opening the hotel or helping him have a job. He said, "I really want to thank you because you let me keep my beard." And it's a cultural thing. Every other resort in the Maldives makes the men shave their beards. Without even, it wasn't about me knowing that. It was about us allowing them to be the people to be themselves. It's very interesting. So we really encourage people to be themselves, to show their personalities. If you're staying at a friend's home, they're like the people that stay with you. They're your hosts. So you should get to know them.
That's also smart. Given the labor shortage, do you find it's easier to hire people, or that people come to work for you
100%.
from other hotels?
I think when we do ask our team members questions as to why do you like working for the Standard, and almost always number one is because they let us be ourselves. That's a big deal.
And what we've spoken a little bit about changing taste. What do you think people want from a hotel now as opposed to 5 years ago or 10 years ago?
I think the fundamentals still remain the same. I think the expectations when we started in this business, whether it was Andre or Ian Schrager, people like that, they used to even call them design hotels, right? Because having good design in a hotel was somehow unique. So
like color TV advertised.
But they used to call them design hotels. But so now, design is not. It can be a differentiator, but you expect good design also. In the early days of this business, oh my gosh, let's put a good restaurant in a hotel. That was somehow unique. Put a nightclub in a hotel. That was unique. Barry Sternlicht was the first one to do a heavenly bed in a Westin hotel. The idea that having maybe it was around 2000. The idea that having a comfortable bed was somehow a unique thing in a hotel, and it was. Oh my God, it was a revolution in the hotel business because he made a comfortable bed, and he was the first one to use white duvets. Oh my God, you can't do that. So the hotel business was very slow. So these were like revolutions at the time. But now people expect good design. They expect a comfortable bed. They expect a shower that works. They expect a great restaurant. So I think those expectations are all there. So in other words, the bar is raised higher. Expectations are higher. So what people want, I don't study that much other than what I would want. I'd want the genuineness of the people that work here, the fact that you can feel that people put their heart and soul into it. Hannes, our designer on this project, intentionally has things allowed to look imperfect. If you look downstairs, there's so much stuff that's hand done, whether it's the mosaic on the which I'll show you, the mosaic on the elevator, or the even the imperfections in the paintings here, or outside we have the mosaic that was all hand done. In fact, one of the early days here, the chief engineer on the property said, "Mark, come over here." He's pointed at the mosaics. "I got to show you something that's not straight." He thought it was going to be a real problem. I said, "That's the point. That means someone did it by hand."
Okay, interesting. So still high expectations. It seems like people are now really obsessed with getting a good night's sleep.
For sure.
There are certain new health trends one has to keep up with.
The reality is, all of this gorgeous design I think that we have, and the perfectly made cocktails and the food that I talked about, if you don't get the basics right, then it doesn't matter how good the other stuff is. It really doesn't. So you have to get the basics right. So I think I've been getting rave reviews on this bed. I slept here the other night. It is really, really nice. But we also understand this, in terms of your market research, this hotel is not going to be for everyone, and that's okay. So we're not trying to be all things for all people. If you have kids, you can't stay here. If you need to watch TV every night before you go to sleep, it's probably not the right hotel for you. If you want, the service level where people are hovering all over you, it's not for you. So it's not trying to be all things to all people. It's trying to be something great for some people.
Yeah, and does that vary location by location, that every hotel is its own experience?
Every hotel has its own experience for sure. But for the standard brand, for example, you can feel that it's a standard all the way through. How that manifests itself in London versus Bangkok versus New York versus Ibiza, it's different how it manifests itself, but the principles are the same. The principles of letting our team be themselves, of having a lot of fun in those hotels, and partnering with people, bringing people who care about what they do, and being a platform for creative talent, whether that be musicians or artists or designers or chefs, like that. Bring that collective together to create the magic that we try to create. That all remains true throughout our hotels.
What is your thought on how the travel business has been impacted following COVID? What kind of trends are you seeing?
A few things. I think obviously it's bounced back really, really strongly, which is encouraging. I think at the depths of the COVID, you didn't know what was going to happen. People were going to stop traveling, and all that's not true. I think in a sense, people love travel more than they ever did because they know how fragile it is and they know that it can be taken away. I think certainly work patterns have affected it. There's no question that, if you go to Midtown Mondays and Fridays, there's not a lot of people there. So from a travel perspective, the length of stay is definitely longer. You absolutely see people staying over from the weekend and bleeding in and allowing the next, coming on a Thursday and leaving on a Tuesday. You see those patterns of people working differently, making their travel patterns differently. I think you see clearly the remote work allows people to go do things that they wouldn't have done before. But the things that people didn't expect to come back have come back even stronger. Group business, people having conventions, events, and things like that. I'm so happy that people not only snap back, but I'd like to think they appreciate that travel experience and getting together with people so much more because they know that it could be taken away.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so do you think you've seen greater demand since COVID?
100%.
Okay,
Greater
and
demand.
in more unique locations?
Definitely on the leisure side of things. Definitely on those elements, the greater demand. What had lagged is and you saw greater demand on the leisure side, and you saw greater demand on the events business that came back very strongly. The day-to-day corporate business has not recovered as fast because there is a truth to the fact that a lot of things can be done by Zoom now. People got comfortable with video conferencing and things like that. So that's probably the one segment you see that coming back, but the leisure business and the events business snapped back pretty quick.
Okay, interesting. And obviously you travel all the time. This is a business where you have to travel to stay abreast of everything, but you are based in New York.
Based in New York. I'm based in New York. I have a house in Austin. My wife, until a couple of days ago, was living in Salt Lake City. We were doing long distance. She moved to New York a couple of days ago, which is great. But we have Bunkhouse Hotels that's headquartered in Austin, so based more or less between New York and Austin. My older daughter just graduated high school, moved to London, so I hope to spend some more time in Europe.
What's kept you in the city, though? What do you think is exciting or interesting about being here?
It's the best city in the world. There's nowhere like it. The energy here is just incredible. This project is a very much a passion project. So I live about 7-8 blocks away, and my first apartment was on Mott Street in Soho, and in Nolita. So the city's incredible. The energy, the vibrancy, the things happen here quickly. I've lived in California. I grew up there, and I moved back to LA a couple times. And there's no spontaneity in LA. You have to plan because of the traffic. People have their houses and there's so much spontaneity in New York. You can go meet someone for a drink, you can have breakfast, and you never know what's going to happen. And the people move fast. People get stuff done.
Yeah, that's interesting. And how many properties do you have here between your various
in New York?
Ventures? Yeah.
We have the standard Highline, we have the standard East Village, and we have the Manor.
Okay. And how did you see those? Did they take a hit during COVID? Did they recover? What did that look like?
What's crazy about a hotel is it never shuts down. Think about it, never. 24/7, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Hotels don't shut down. Restaurants shut down, office buildings shut down, hotels never shut down.
So you didn't shut down during COVID?
No, we did. So they never shut down. So this is the first time we actually had to shut down. So you don't even know how to shut down and lock up a hotel because it never closes. So imagine that it was such an incredibly painful period. It was really hard to go from $100 of revenue to zero, to have to figure out how to get these PPP loans, to furlough our employees, to let some employees go. It was gut wrenching. I never forget. We put you maybe have seen we lit up the buildings with heart signs, in the windows, just because we were sitting at home and we couldn't do anything. It was gut wrenching. We had, of our 22 hotels Only one stayed open the whole time. A hotel called the Hotel St. Cecilia in Austin. Beautiful little hotel, 14 rooms, but it had outdoors. It was like a little oasis, so that was able to stay. Otherwise, 21 hotels shut. I didn't know how long it was going to last. Every day, we'd sit in my apartment. I stayed in the city through the whole thing. Never left, and I listened to the sirens and have listened to President Trump every 5 p.m. every day with those briefings, and it was unbelievable. So we got through it. Thankful to our shareholders and the team members that stuck with us, and thankfully we're stronger than we've ever been, but it was terrible.
Yeah, oh my God. And do you want to, also, if you could just explain real quickly, because you have a number of different properties, you have the Standard, this is its own unique thing. So if you could just kind of walk through each of the different.
So we have the Standard hotels, which started in 1998, about 26 years ago now, on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood. It was the first one that was started was an old retirement apartment building that looks like an old motel that turned into the Standard. That was followed by downtown LA, then Miami, which is a beautiful property, then the Standard Highline, which opened in 2009 or so. And that kind of put the brand on the map. Then from there we did Standard East Village, Standard London, and we grew the properties, about 10 or 12 open now. Then we have some beautiful ones opening this year. We have a Singapore opening. We just opened a Standard X in Melbourne. We'll talk a little about that. We have some European properties, Brussels and Lisbon opening. So we have a bunch of properties opening under the Standard brand. In 2014-15, we bought the Bunkhouse Hotel Group, which is based in Austin, Texas. It was founded by a woman named Liz Lambert, who's also a creative genius. And those were started as, actually the first one was Hotel San Jose. Started the same year, almost around the same time as the Standard Hollywood, ironically. Old Motor Court Inn on South Congress in Austin, which was a very, very rundown area at that time, and not what it is today. There's an Hermes shop on South Congress to see how far it's come. So Bunkhouse started with this Hotel San Jose, a property in Marfa, Texas called El Cosmico, Hotel St. Cecilia, Austin Motels. So they have 5 hotels in Austin now. A few more. We're opening a beautiful hotel in Houston called the St. Augustine. So that Bunkhouse, and a lovely hotel in Baja, California called San Cristobal. So Bunkhouse has about 10 hotels. We have a brand called the Perry Hotels, which is mostly based in Asia and Thailand. We launched a brand this year called Standard X, which is a youthful version of the Standard, kind of go back to the roots of the Standard in Hollywood. That opened in Melbourne this year. And we just launched the Manor, which is our product, our experience that you're having here.
Okay. And are there going to be more Manors across
one step at a time?
The world? Okay.
I think, there's some hotel brands that start and they say, we're going to have 100 of these, or that kind of thing. To me, it's one step at a time.
You really think of it as individual properties.
I want people to love this. I think they'll love it. I don't know yet. I hope they will. Yeah. And if they love it as much as I think they will, then there'll be more. But I don't want to put the cart before the horse. Yeah,
and you kind of touched on this, but I'm curious just to hear a bit more from you. You talk about finding individual properties that excite you, but clearly you're thinking strategically about, okay, Portugal seems really hot. Yeah. We want to have a place there. How do you make that decision about, okay, this is just a spot that people are going to go to for a year and be done versus, okay, I think there's longevity here?
I think you have to have a feel for it, having been around and traveled a fair amount, and you can feel when something's happening. And what I mean by that is I would go to places and I would say, God, I love this place. I wish there were a Standard here. So I would go to Lisbon. I started going to Lisbon, amazing city. But there was nothing like what we did, nothing like what we do. Mm-hmm. Say, wow, we really wish there were a Standard hotel here.
So it really is.
It's a feel
intuitive.
For it. A lot of intuition. I mean, they're natural places, okay. Of course, we would love to have a Standard hotel in Tokyo. We'd love to have a Standard hotel in Paris. We don't have a Standard hotel in, like, that's kind of obvious in Milan. So those are easy in the sense that, yes, of course we love to have a Standard hotel there. Mm-hmm. Capitals of fashion and commerce and all that. But other places like Lisbon early on, we started a project in Lisbon about 5 years ago. So there's something really special happening in this place, and you can really feel it. Mexico City, I started going there 7 or 8 years ago. I felt like an idiot when I went to Mexico City. I'd always heard it was crowded and congested and dangerous and polluted. And I was my family's from India. I was expecting it was going to be like Mumbai. Yeah. I got there like, this place is like Barcelona. This is incredible. And so you fall in love with places, and you realize that the fun places are when you're surprised and you say, this place is fantastic. So in terms of growth, it's really feeling a sense of a place that where what we do would resonate, a place where it doesn't have something like what we can create, and then making it happen.
What were the biggest changes you made after you took over from Andre Balazs?
That's a good question. I learned so much. I learned so much from him in terms of how he thought about this, how to do things differently. I would say part of it is I moved to be more inclusive in a lot of ways. There was a lot of there's certainly an element of celebrity that went along with Andre, which is amazing. That was his world. There was also a bit of an exclusive aspect to that world, and I think I tried to open it up in terms of being more inclusive to people that we welcome on our team, being more inclusive to people that we welcome as guests. That to me was very, very important.
Okay, interesting. I know the High Line is obviously known for its crazy windows.
Yeah.
I mean, do other locations have an infamous?
So London is an incredible property. London, we took over this old council building, 1974 brutalist council building. In fact, when we saw that building, when Andre designed the High Line, he made it so that what would it look like if he had uncovered this building and it was always there.
Yeah.
That's why it looks like that. People didn't realize that was a new building. And when we saw the standard in London, it actually was already there. It was an architecture, the brutalist fashion that had already been there. So in that building, we preserved everything that was there. We did interesting things, like in the bottom of that building was an old library. So we actually preserved that library and built a new library there.
That's a wrap on today's episode of New York Next. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. You can also catch us on the New York Post YouTube channel. And of course, be sure to follow us on social media for the latest updates and behind-the-scenes content. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. Join the conversation and let us know what you think.